Wow, due to the reduction of carbon emissions from everyone staying home recently, the night sky is sure beautiful. Astronomy can be defined as the branch of science which deals with celestial objects, space, and the physical universe as a whole. Space is vast. It is also not only literally out of this world, but the heavens, so to speak, carry a lot of cultural and historical significance. As humans have evolved over time, the heavens have been something we as a people over all cultures have been deeply fascinated with. Whether it be the Babylonians, one of the first civilizations in 1800 BC to chronicle the movement of the sun and moon, to the ancient Greeks, the culture which was the foundation for modern Western astronomy, humans love space. Religion, navigation, fascination, suffocation, no breathing, don't give a if I cut my arm bleeding. With all of this rich history backing astronomical and astrological symbolism and ideas, one modern day pillar of culture still stands to carry on this proud legacy. And it's a trading card game we all know and love called Yu-Gi-Oh! Now today I'm going to talk over all of the different cards and mostly archetypes that are heavily based on astronomic bodies and ideas. If I happen to not mention a card that you think fits the bill on this topic, let me know down in the comments below because I know I've probably missed a bunch due to the scope of this topic. Also, subscribe please. It's free and it means a lot. For those of you who may be unaware, we live on a planet called Earth in a solar system with 8, back in my day, 9 other planets all revolving around a singular entity known as the Sun. There are 2 archetypes or series of cards directly based off of our own solar system, Agents and the ever so aptly named Planet series. Agents were a deck comprised of light and dark fairies released way back in the 2004 set Ancient Sanctuary. 7 years later, the archetype received the structure deck treatment and went on to not only see some pretty good success, but even saw Konami limit the Earth itself. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here. The archetype had a cool naming convention where each main deck planet was the agent of blank followed by the planet name. They all revolved around a field spell known as the Sanctuary in the Sky. It has nothing to do with planets and more to do with Roman mythology, but one of this archetype's biggest downfalls, especially in contemporary Yu-Gi-Oh!, is the fact that this card's own effect kinda sucks. Unless you're running Cloudians, of course. Luckily, you could always run the retrain of the card, Sanctum of Parshath, which lets you stack your deck with fairies and gives your monsters a slight stat buff. Starting from farthest away, we have the Agent of Entropy, Uranus. Yet for some reason, Neptune and Pluto were never created, even despite Pluto having planet status when the archetype was first released. Uranus was the most recent direct piece of support, being released in Duelist Alliance as the first dark member of the team. He's a free special summon if you had Sanctuary in the Sky on the field and is a level modulating tuner, but again, he's only good if you choose to run the underperforming field spell or its slightly better equivalent. The Agent of Judgment, Saturn, has an interesting but boring burn gimmick effect that only works if you have the Sanctuary active on the field. The Agent of Miracles, Jupiter, is actually a pretty decent card and lets you banish a fairy from the grave to increase a fairy on the field's attack, and lets you discard a fairy if you have Sanctuary active in order to special summon a banished fairy. Though I knew it'd be a miracle for this card to be as decent as it is, I knew no miracle would give it anything good unless you use that all-important field spell. The Agent of Force, Mars, isn't affected by spells and he can boost himself up by the difference between yours and your opponent's life points, if your life points are higher. And you have Sanctuary active. And he starts with the 0/0 stat line. The Agent of Mystery, Earth. Now we're talking. He's a Stratos of the deck, and his extra bonus special Sanctuary effect gives him one more target in the form of this deck's boss monster that happens to not be an agent himself. He's a tuner too, and searching is rarely a bad thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! He was definitely good for the time, being limited at one point and slowly peeled off over time, and is only bogged down today because of all of his targets kind of aging poorly. Did I say aged poorly? I meant that for all except the Agent of Creation, Venus. When links came out, they were trying to balance some with a clause not allowing tokens to be used as material. Venus special summons out Mystical Shine Balls, a brick in your deck whose only purpose is to be special summoned by this card. Her effect is definitely interesting and can lead to some interesting link combos, though especially when Firewall was around. Wisdom Mercury is the last of the agents, and he just has a weird drawing gimmick that's super situational and ultimately not too good, especially in modern times. All of these planets revolve around our boss monster, Master Hyperion. Not only does he have the title of coolest artwork for a fairy type monster in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, but he also has one of the easiest summoning conditions ever. Banish one agent from your hand, field, or graveyard. He then lets you once per turn banish a light fairy in your grave in order to destroy a card on the field. Sanctuary just allows him to do that one more time a turn. And now that we talked about the planets, let's talk about the planet series. I love these cards. A lot. The planet series, or legendary planets, were a group of monsters that held heavy plot significance in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX manga. They were like created by Aster Phoenix's father while he was possessed by Tragodia and stuff. Definitely super crazy lore there to unpack another time. The Suppression Pluto lets you guess a card in your opponent's hand, and if you manage to guess correctly, you can steal either a monster or spell and trap from your opponent's field. The Tyrant Neptune is one of the few cards in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That can freely copy the effect of any monster that's in your graveyard. This landed him on the ban list due to some interesting FTK shenanigans, but it's cool to see a card in this series actually being upheld in the nicest and most prestigious jail known to nerds everywhere. The Despair Uranus can search a continuous spell or trap based off your opponent's decision, then he gains attack for how many spells and traps you control and protects them from destruction. The Big Saturn has only ever had one printing in the TCG, within the original Machina structure deck as a common. His effect is that if you want to make a display featuring each member of this series, you have to get the V-Jump promo version of him so you can keep the set all holographic. The Grand Jupiter has you discard 2 cards to absorb an opponent's monster, the Blazing Mars is the worst volcanic support I've seen in my life, and elemental hero Terra Firma said "F the naming convention, I'm a plot device." Yeah, Jaden's flame wingman in the GX manga was actually this guy. He's a pretty cool hero in terms of both design and effect, and he's the only non-main deck monster within the planet series. The Splendid Venus weakens all non-fairies on the field by 500 attack and defense, and makes sure your spell and trap effects cannot be negated. The Tripper Mercury feels like it should be in the Lunalights, since he's basically a multi-attacker that makes all other monsters lose their original attack if he's tribute summoned with 3 tributes. And finally, the Supremacy Sun himself has an interesting gimmick of discarding a card to special summon himself from the grave during the standby phase after he's destroyed and sent there. The Sun is just one star in the greater universe of ours, with some of the other stars that we can see out there forming imaginary pictures we know as constellations. This not only helps us track which stars are which and other stuff that I don't have much knowledge on, but it also gives us cool imagery and lore to associate to these celestial bodies. A bunch of tiny lights in the sky? Boring. Slap some swarming effects that focus on rank 4 Xyz summoning, and you got yourself a deck that won 2015 Worlds. Stellarknights. Stellarknights are level 4 main deck warriors based off of the brightest stars in the sky, whereas Stellarknights, the Xyz monsters within the Stellarknight archetype, are based off of the asterisms, or in layman's terms, the unofficial constellations that the Stellarknight stars are a part of. Some notable main deck Stellarknights are Deneb, who searches a Stellarknight on summon, Altair, who special summons a Stellarknight from your grave on summon, and Vega, who special summons a Stellarknight from your hand on summon. There's also one who sends a Stellarknight from the deck to the grave, but that's slightly a tier below those other 3 mainstays. In terms of Stellarknights, Deltaros is important because he inhibits disruptions from your opponent when you summon something, and he can remove an Xyz material to destroy a card on the field. If he is sent himself from the field to the grave, he is replaced with another Stellarknight from your hand or deck. Trigger is another Stellarknight extra deck staple that bounces all cards on the field back to the hand when he's summoned and locks you into Stellarknights for the rest of that turn. His Detach rips a card from your opponent's hand, and when he's sent to the grave while he still has a material, you can special summon a Stellarknight from your graveyard. Ptolemaeus and Bartolomæus are both based on the Greek astronomer Ptolemy, for which his constellations were the inspiration for all of the Stellarknight archetype, except for the one Zephyra. Ptolemaeus is the strongest of the two with the built-in rank-up gimmicks, so strong in fact it's banned to this day. Astrology is a pseudoscience or a branch of science that refrains from thinking empirical data is important. The Constellar archetype is based off of the zodiac constellations which are used to determine one's horoscope. Sheraton represents Aries and is the searcher of the deck. Aldebaran represents Taurus and lets you special summon a level 3 Constellar from your hand when he's normal summoned. Pollux is a Gemini, and the turn he's summoned, he fittingly gives you a double summon effect. Acubens is Cancer, and so is his effect. Leonus is Leo, and has a once per turn double summon effect. Virgo is fittingly named and is the same as Aldebaran, but with level 5s. Zubinescamali is a level 5 representing Libra, who also searches on summon. Antares is Scorpio and adds back a Constellar monster from your grave to hand on summon. Caus is Sagittarius with some level modulation and synchro restriction built in. Aleti the Capricorn special summons a level 4 from hand when he's normal summoned. Siat is Aquarius and has a Cyber Dragon effect and can copy the level of any Constellar on field or graveyard, and he's locked into only Constellar Xyz. And Alreska is Pisces, who when this level 6 is summoned, you can special summon any Constellar from your hand to the field in defense position. And that's all 12 horoscope signs, each monster being based off of a star and their corresponding constellations. Oh yeah, and there's also the 13th sign of Ophiuchus, representing in the archetype by Ras El Hagyu, who can tribute himself to special summon a Constellar from your hand or grave. This 13th sign isn't actually a sign though, because the signs of the zodiac are a 12-fold division of the ecliptic, so that each sign spans 30 degrees of celestial longitude, approximately the distance the sun travels in a month, and in the Western tradition are aligned with the seasons so that the March equinox always falls on the boundary between Pisces and Aries. Constellars have some Xyz monsters as well, being based off of the star clusters as opposed to the individual stars like the main deck monsters. Hyades is the rank 3 that can detach to change all opponents' monsters to face-up defense. Omega is the rank 4 that has the beautiful ulti printing and gives protection. And Pallades is a walking rank 5 compulse. Persepi is bad, Diamond is good, and oh yeah, here's another Ptolemy reference. Rex Goodwin had a lot of lore surrounding his cards related to Incan mythos concerning the sun and moon. Cards referencing the prophets or astronomers, as well as the moon and sun itself in the form of looping buddies, Inti and Kila. Star drawing. Galaxy and photons are literally based off the galaxy, but more like how galaxy pattern clothes were cool in 2015. Wizards, soldiers, dragons, these are all cool themes with just a special theme on top. Spaceships like Cosmos and Gradius, the monsters based off of Konami's old space video games, don't count. I'm talking bodies in space that are all natural, baby. One could argue Chronomaly may fit into this, but they're more ancient stuff all around than just astronomy itself. Space is a fascinating topic from a cultural, philosophical, scientific, and even pseudoscientific standpoint. Humans have always had a fascination with the greater unknown and have, since the dawn of time and the age of science, tried to figure out life's biggest mysteries. We are just a tiny speck floating in this giant chasm of nothingness with a few stars and planets and other space junk dotted throughout. But hey, at least we have this little card game to distract ourselves from all that heavy stuff. I'm JC Theater Yu-Gi-Oh, and I hope you have a good one. See ya! Well, that's all of them.